Thank you. For the record, Darrell Perry, CEO of Liberty Lobby LLC. And what I'm hearing is that the state police already have most of these authorities. We just need to, quote unquote, tighten up the language to make sure that it's clear to everyone that they have this authority, which means that if they already have the authority, why is this needed? There was the question earlier about lines 10 through 14 on page 2, and I see that as basically being the same sort of language as what's being added in lines 17 through 19, although 17 through 19 goes a little bit further to say that basically anything a state trooper does, as long as they're acting in quote unquote good faith, is allowed. And that seems to be codifying into New Hampshire statute what I believe to be a flawed U.S. Supreme Court ruling in the case of Hine v. North Carolina, where the Supreme Court ruled that basically ignorance of the law is an excuse if you're a police officer. I forget the specifics of the case, but the court ruled that the police officer acted in good faith and did not violate the Fourth Amendment by basically going on what Representative Sylvia referred to as a fishing expedition. And I do see this as basically giving a fishing permit to state police to go after the people bringing drugs on the streets, which they said that that's how most of the drugs get into the state. I don't really know if anybody's using carrier pigeons to bring drugs into the state. So it would seem that, yes, they are coming in on the roads. I see this as largely unneeded and also broadening what they're saying already exists to where, again, as long as a police officer acts in good faith and he says he acted in good faith, whether he did or not, they can get away with pretty much anything. With that, I will answer any questions.
Representative Hopper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Assistant Attorney General gave us an example of why they needed this using the example on Clinton Street. Can you give us an example of why we shouldn't enact this law in other words, an example of what you're referring to?
I can think of a lot of examples where police in various drug raids have for example, thrown a flashbang into the crib of a 9-month-old baby. Courts ruled that the police are not liable for what happened because they had no knowledge of what was on the other side of that window. There was a case in, I believe, Detroit where police at 3 o'clock in the morning did a no-knock raid into someone's house. A 7-year-old girl was asleep on the couch. She sat up as the police officer was yelling, "Don't move." She was shot. She was killed. And the courts ruled that the police acted in good faith. They didn't know that it was a 7-year-old girl sleeping on the couch. They just knew that she disobeyed the order of "don't move." There are numerous other examples of police acting in what I would consider to be a reckless manner, where if I did it, I would most certainly be convicted of a crime. But because it's somebody that's employed as a police officer and they said I acted in good faith, no foul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I get that, but what I was referring to is in this bill, it's kind of particular about the movement and authority of state police on the roads and secondary roads of the state of New Hampshire. Can you give me an example, like in Keene, where the...
I know someone mentioned Keene earlier.
If we pass this, it will harm the citizens.
I know someone mentioned Keene earlier, and while I live there, I don't know, every example of what's ever happened with a police encounter. But if you read lines 17 through 19 on page 2, it says, "No civil liability shall lie against the state or any state actor for any violation of this section as long as the individual was acting in good faith." So as long as the police officer says, I was acting in good faith and I thought that I had the jurisdiction, then the courts are going to say no foul.
Thank you.
Representative Mulligan.
Thank you, thank you, Representative Fagan. Okay, so we've been told that all the police forces here in the state support this bill. The locals, the state police, the federal police, everybody supports this bill. I guess I'm wondering, what actual experience do you have in policing the state?
Well, I've never been an actual police officer. I was a corrections officer in Pennsylvania about 15 years ago. Realized I did not like the field, so I left. And I don't see where, my police experience or lack thereof really has anything to do with whether or not this is a good bill.
Representative Mulligan, I think your question's out of order.
Oh,
Okay?
I'm
Because
sorry.
you're impugning the witness, and
I
we're,
apologize.
we're here to get information and opinions from the witness, not to test their credibility. So please bring up a question. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was
It's okay.
just trying
It's
to get
okay.
a
Yeah.
basis for his
We
information.
there's other forums where we can discuss how we weight the witnesses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm a first-term rep, and if that was out of order, I apologize. And apparently it was out of order, so I do apologize. All right, at this point, I don't have another question.
Thank you. Representative Rulord has a question.
I do have a question.
Yes.
And, it's with regard to your statement earlier, on page 2, on lines 11 through 13. And, I think you said that that has the same effect as lines 17 and 20. And I wanted to see if you saw the word on line 12, that the criminal case shall not be dismissed if the police employee has failed to comply with the jurisdictional limits. And so I didn't know if you saw that, because that to me limits that. Did you see that in that sentence?
Yeah, I'm seeing it on line 12. I'm just going back to read the entire sentence for context, where it says, no criminal case shall be abated, quashed, or dismissed, and no evidence in a criminal case shall be suppressed or excluded because a police employee has failed to comply. With the, right, so just because you have failed to comply with the jurisdictional limits, then again, no criminal case shall be abated, quashed, or dismissed, and no evidence shall be suppressed or excluded. So it's saying that all of the evidence is going to be heard, even if they fail to comply with the jurisdictional limits.
Thank you.
Representative Sylvia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at line 17, and any state actor for violation of this section, any state actor might be broad. Is it narrowed enough with the inclusion of this section? Do you see any issues?
I do see that as being overly broad. If the term police employee is being used elsewhere in statute and in this bill, then yeah, line 17 should say police employee. If you're going to include line 17 through 19 in what winds up actually coming out of committees.
Representative Mulligan.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. Okay, the question that says here that you were, you mentioned something about in line 17, 18, and 19 is about was acting in good faith. That
Yes.
felt that was too broad. But doesn't there have to be a finding? If everything goes to court, there has to be some kind of a finding that this police officer was acting in good faith?
If by finding you mean the police officer says, I was acting in good faith, and the judge says yes, then that would be a finding. There have been numerous cases across the country of what I would consider to be police misconduct, where the officer said I was acting in good faith, and the judge and or the jury agreed that, yep, you said you were acting in good faith, so therefore good faith.
Representative Mulligan.
Well, I don't want to, spend too much time on this, but I was thinking if you were in court, then that the person would have to prove that they were acting in good faith. They would have to give reasons. Don't you think so? So that the judge or the jury would have something to base their agreement that this person was acting in good faith.
One would think that they would have to give some kind of evidence towards that, but again, if you look at a lot of the court cases, it's just they said they were acting in good faith, and that's good enough.
Go ahead, follow up.
I don't know if I'm impugning, but I was just wondering how many court cases have raised that issue? Because you said you...
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I could probably try getting that information from the Institute for Justice or one of the other entities that does look at police misconduct, but that's not a number that I know off the top of my head.
Thank you very much.
And I see no additional questions, so thank you very much.